In this episode, we will discuss 3 wealth-related infographics published by Visual Capitalist. The first, the global distribution of wealth; the second, visualizing the global wealth pyramid based on the UBS Global Wealth Databook 2023, and the third titled, Investments of the Ultra-Wealthy, based on Knight Frank data. The infographic titled, World Distribution of Wealth, presents 4 levels of adult wealth by continent. Unfortunately, no information was provided whether the numbers refer to property value or annual income. It is more likely to be about accumulated wealth, the so-called net worth. But we can also pretend that it doesn't matter, because the value of assets is usually proportional to the income earned. Although this does not always apply to, for example, heirs. From the infographic we learn that the lowest level of wealth below $10,000 is achieved by 22% of adults in Africa, 28% of adults in Asia and the Pacific excluding China and India, 8% of adults in China, 24% of adults in India, 6% of adults in Europe, 10% of Latin American adults and 2% of North American adults. If we consider that this category refers to the poor, we see that the lowest poverty is in the countries of North America and Europe. And here's a technical note. The countries of Asia and the Pacific have been thrown into one basket, which makes it impossible to notice the fact that Australia and New Zealand have the least number of poor people in the world. The second category is the global middle class with a wealth level of $10,000 to $100,000. In this category, 40% are Chinese, 19% are other Asians and Pacific Islanders, 12% are Indians and Europeans, 9% are Latin American adults, and 5% are North Americans. Here the USA and Canada, because Mexico was included in Latin America. The wealthy class between $100,000 and $1 million. The majority of people here are Europeans 27%, 25% Chinese, 20% other Asians, 19% from the USA and Canada, 4% from Latin America, 3% from India and 1% from Africa. The richest class is clearly dominated by residents of the USA and Canada, 42% of this category, 27% are Europeans, 17% Asians, 11% Chinese, 2% adults from Latin America and 1% each from Africa and India. Have you already found your place on this infographic? Do you have reasons to be dissatisfied or satisfied? Write a comment. The next infographic shows global wealth in the form of a pyramid. Below the pyramid there is a bar of data from which we will start the discussion of this infographic. It is the number of adults in the world who have a certain amount of wealth. Each adult was assigned to one of the 4 groups discussed in the first infographic. Wealth up to $10,000, up to $100,000, up to $1 million and over $1 million. Please note that as many as 52% of the world's population belongs to the poorest economic stratum with assets of up to tens of thousands of US dollars. If you are in this group, you are in the majority. The second good news is that 20 years ago this group comprised as much as 80% of the world's population. Every third adult on Earth belongs to the group with assets ranging from $10,000 to $100,000, called the global middle class. The authors of the infographic report that this group has more than doubled in the last 2 decades. About 1 in 10 adults belongs to the group with assets between $100,000 and $1 million. And every 100th inhabitant of the world has assets exceeding $1 million US dollars. This group is called high net worth individuals. In the richest group, the increase in millionaires exceeds 10% per year, which is the highest of all the groups presented. And now we return to the pyramid. The bricks of this pyramid represent the volume of wealth. You can imagine it, for example, as containers of banknotes representing the value of all the world's wealth arranged in the form of a pyramid. And now you see that the wealth of the poorest, i.e. half of humanity, takes up only 1.2% of this pyramid. The middle class, which includes every third adult on Earth, owns 13.6% of the pyramid. The upper class, with assets worth up to $1 million, owns 40% of the pyramid, and the richest 1% owns 46% of the pyramid. Can you see where you are on this pyramid? And where would you like to be? And now I will show you where the richest 1% of people invest their wealth. These data come from a survey of 500 managers managing assets worth $2.5 trillion. 1/3 of wealth, 32%, is invested in homes, first and second homes. The wealthiest people own 3 or 4 houses. 1/5 of the wealth, 18%, is invested in shares. 1/6, 14% are commercial properties understood as being in direct physical possession. 12% is invested in bonds. 6% is allocated to private equity and venture capital funds. 5% are commercial real estate funds. 3% are commercial real estate REITs, so together with direct investments we have 22% in commercial real estate. 3% can be art or another hobby, 2% gold, 1% cryptocurrency, and 5% in other assets. Please note that 54% of wealth is invested in the real estate market directly and indirectly. And here's an interesting fact. In developed countries, there are many people with assets exceeding $1 million, where the only residential property constitutes almost 100% of this wealth. And these people lead very modest lives, even though, according to statistics, they are among the richest in the world. To make life taste good, you need some sauce, cash flow. An important factor is the liquidity of assets, but this should always be analyzed individually. I encourage you to take a quick summary of your assets by class from this infographic. Maybe you'll find that it's worth working on diversification, or maybe you have a well-balanced investment portfolio. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss other interesting analyses.